right, and welcome to the Business Shower Podcast, a podcast for business owners to shine. I am your host, Kelly Edwards, and today we are here with Risa Oze, right? Did I say it right? I just want to make
Yeah,
sure. Okay.
you got it.
From Holding Space Heals. So, how are you doing today?
I am good. I'm good. It's a little dreary out, but I like it for a Sunday.
Yeah, it is kind of like dark
Cozy.
outside. Yeah. You're in New York, right?
I am. Where are you?
Okay. I'm in New Jersey.
All
So,
right. Same,
yeah,
same.
we're right next door to each other. All right, so tell our listeners who you are and what you do and what your business does, actually.
All right. So my name is Risa. Holding Space Heals is the name of my coaching practice. And I am it's a mouthful, but a transformational behavioral coach. Essentially, I am from a holistic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I work with people to change their behaviors and heal past traumas and emotional blockages in order to bring about their best and ideal lives. And I actually focus on anxious attachment in relationships and dating. So, yeah.
Awesome. We might have to talk.
That's what I'm here for.
Separately.
Fun.
Okay, so tell us your story and how it shaped you into the person that you are.
Absolutely. All right. So where to start? So a little bit of background. My career was actually in the last over a decade now. I've been in advertising sales. So I was selling to Fortune 500 brands, custom content for platforms and also on the tech side of things. And just over the last, I kind of always looked at work as, a means to get a paycheck and then kind of getting my kicks elsewhere, right? Over the last few years, just having some personal life experiences, life doing what it does, I just started to ask myself the harder questions, like what brings me joy and how do I want to spend my days? What is my purpose here? Do I want to be spending, 9+ hours a day investing in a career that isn't really in alignment with what my passion is? Mm-hmm. So to take it back another step, I've always been obsessed with the human psyche, with psychology. I've been my own guinea pig in terms of growth and development and all different healing modalities. And I had seen in myself some monumental shifts when it came to my own mental health and well-being and all the different aspects of my life. So while I was still working in corporate, I started to kind of dip my toes into wellness and psychology fields. And after asking myself those questions, I wanted to explore how I wanted to spend my time, right? There's so many different ways that you can help facilitate healing. And I didn't want to just jump into anything. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to take that time while I had a steady job to explore that. So I took a few different routes. First, I got certified in positive psychology as a holistic coach from the institute called the Whole Being Institute. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that don't know, positive psychology is a scientific study, so it's reputable and there's a lot of research backing it up. But it's essentially the study of strength that enabled individuals and communities to thrive. So it's founded on the belief that people want to lead meaningful lives and to cultivate within them what that looks like to enhance life in all aspects, right? So a lot of us, and I felt like I was kind of in a rat race, right? In New York City, just going to work, going to the gym, hanging out with my friends. But once I took a step back and asked myself, what am I really living for? I realized that's a question a lot of us need to ask ourselves and need some help with, and that's okay. And then a second form, another, on my exploratory journey of what I wanted to do, I also got certified in Reiki, which is an energy healing modality from an institute here in Brooklyn. So with both of those tools, as well as all, my own guinea pig tools, right? So like mindfulness, meditation, therapy, hypnosis, all this stuff, I cultivated my own practice, which I now call Holding Space Heals. And I like to think of myself as a vessel to work with people and to guide them towards whatever healing they need. because it's different for everyone. We're all on our own journeys and have our own paths. So I hope that explains a little bit of what I do.
Yes, it does. So I have to ask you a question. Do you
Yes, please.
practice the I'm still learning, so if I mess it up, I'm sorry.
No, there's a lot. I just said a lot.
Yes, I'm still learning. So the 7 chakras, because I have my bracelet on. Look, I'm like, I got my bracelet
Yes,
on.
yes, all the colors.
Yes.
Oh, you're speaking my language. I love it. Yes, absolutely. So chakras, and I paint as well. And that was another something, like exploring that, as well as creativity, I think, is also a big part of the healing journey. Like we move away from play for play self as adults. But anyway, yeah, I actually just did something about chakras. Chakras are essentially energy centers. And every huge religion, spirituality, anything with mysticism in it is all about energy centers. So I don't care if you're Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, it always comes down to the same thing. It's source, right? So to answer your question, chakras are different energy centers in the body, but it's kind of a blueprint for the larger world in and of itself. And I do work with those chakras in energy healing, and each one represents something else. So sometimes we'll have blockages, and like, for example, a big thing for me that keeps coming up is my heart chakra and what that means. So yes, I absolutely work with that as well as healing.
Oh, awesome. Yes. So like I said, I'm still learning. I mean, I have my stones and
it never ends.
No, it doesn't. I try to charge
More to learn
like that, but it's a lot. It definitely is. Okay, so how did you come up with your name for your company?
I love that question. So in my own journey, holding space, I kept hearing this phrase, and I was using it a lot, and I just thought it made perfect sense. Essentially, holding space is taking the judgment out of it and being present, right? For your own feelings, for your own, whatever is coming up for you, and allowing yourself to feel it. Mm-hmm. And so I do that for my clients as well. I hold space. I allow for a moment in time to process what is happening. It's kind of the opposite of like distracting ourselves and addictions and afflictions that we're running away from. It's allowing yourself without judgment to be present, which I think is where the healing can come into play.
Yes. Okay. So, what are some experiences you've taken from school that helped you start your business?
Yeah.
I heard you say that you're psychology, so I'm trying to see, what did you major in when you were in college?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been out of college for a while now. It's crazy how fast time goes, right? But it's been over a decade. And it's interesting because I was 18, right? We're like babies when we go to study and decide what we're supposed to do for the rest of our lives. And I kind of fell into psychology. I think it was kind of low-hanging fruit. And for that reason, I actually took the advice of an adult and said, I'm going to switch to business, even though I love psychology. And I did really well in psychology, and it fascinated me. But being that I didn't know what I wanted to do, I thought business would make more sense. Hindsight is 2020. And I actually ended up going with a dual major. But I think just studying it really ignited that spark. So I remember even learning about attachment theory, which now is a huge part of my practice, learning about it just from the perspective of Psych 101 and human development. And another thing that I loved in school was, and I remember this name being like, this is really intimidating, but I actually ended up loving the class called neurobehavioral psychology, which is really about the scientific study of how our minds are wired, how the neurons work, and how our brains are plastic, right? They're flexible. So we start to form these associations from being children all the way to being adults. And that's what shapes our behavior. So college ignited the spark. I ended up going on a little bit of a different path just because of my own associations and, the way that society is set up and my own path. But I think it ignited the spark in psychology. But beyond that, honestly, all the business stuff and it's full of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So, what do you enjoy most about being an entrepreneur?
It's still relatively new for me, right? I've been in the corporate world for over a decade, so some of the things I love are the freedom to plan my own day. Like I'm working till 11 o'clock midnight, but I'm working out in the middle of the day and going on walks and trying to get the sunshine in when possible in New York winters. So I love that, and I love learning and working towards goals that I believe in rather than contributing to a company that's not really in alignment with my passion. So I would say probably my favorite things about it. And also just exploring, like constantly meeting new people, constantly pushing myself. I enjoy that. It's challenging, but I enjoy that as well.
Okay. So I heard you say that you were in the corporate world for a very long time. How long did you work in corporate America? Because I was there myself too. So
Yeah.
that's why
Well, we need to connect on that.
Yeah, 13 years, and I got laid off.
Yes.
Yes, in freaking March. Well, no, February. But
Oh, I got laid off the end of August. COVID,
Okay.
It's forcing us to go within. I think
Yes.
it's a huge awakening for better and for worse. And sometimes, through chaos comes clarity.
Yes.
You have to be like sometimes just pushed, right? Over the edge, or else I would have never fully taken that step.
No.
So good for us.
Yes.
But yeah, I actually so after college, I'm Israeli, and I ended up moving across the world to Israel and falling into technology over there and working in advertising there and doing sales for ad tech. And then I moved back to New York when I was about 26, and I worked on the tech side of things. And I started to sell to Fortune 500 companies, all the different ad tech technologies. So anything from like tracking analytics within apps to video content. There's so many different technologies on the back end there. And then I moved over to content actually. And I knew that I work well with the right side of my brain, and the technology just wasn't doing it for me. So I did push myself to move to more of the creative side of things. And I moved over to I worked at, it was a magazine called Nylon that went digital. And then most recently I was at Genius, which was originally Rap Genius. And they do the lyrics on Spotify. Yeah. And so I really enjoyed selling the content aspect of it because we got to do a lot of storytelling and talk to our community. So there was that creative aspect of it, but it still wasn't. It was like I leveled up, but I didn't fully level up. And yeah, there's good and bad to everything, right? So I enjoyed collaborating with teams. I enjoyed going on meetings and coming up with creative solutions. But at the end of the day, sales was a lot of pressure, and I'm more of a team player, I think, than the competitive type. Yeah. So that was weighing on me for a while there. But there's good and bad in everything, right? So I try to take the lessons that I learned from those companies and bring them into where I am now. Hopefully it'll pay off.
Yes, it will. It will. Speak it into existence.
Yes.
Okay, so what is your biggest pain point that you've been dealing with now in business with the whole pandemic going on?
Yeah. Oh, where to start? So I think it's still relatively new practice for me. So I'm right now, again, exploring all the different avenues of which I can connect with my audience. And I find it exciting, but it's also, I would say the biggest pain point, to be completely transparent, is my own fear, right? Like one thing doesn't work out and there's not that immediate gratification. I do one workshop and I don't get 10 leads and I want to throw it all out the door. So personally, that's something that I've been facing a lot. My own fears are coming up to look at me. And I do think I keep hearing this. The way we are in one place of our lives is how we show up in most of the places of our lives. So I'm seeing that a lot. I'm believing in myself and just believing in my mission. That said, yeah, I mean, coming up with the business plan, staying focused, having to do the marketing, and also staying focused on my clients' needs and showing up as the best possible coach for them while getting my name out there. It's a lot. It's a lot for one person. So
it is. And kudos to you. You're doing it all by yourself right now.
thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Yes. Okay. So, 3 people who most influenced you in your journey.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, so I've always been obsessed with self-help. And what's funny about that is I was so ashamed of that for so long. Like, I remember if I had friends come over, or God forbid, a guy that I was dating, and I left out my self-help books, like I'd like stuff them under my drawer. And now I've I've fully embraced that. I'm like, wait, that's what makes me me. I love growing, and that's awesome. So I remember when I was right after college, before I moved across the country, I found Louise Hay, who was a pioneer in manifestation, I guess, self-help. And she wrote How to Heal Your Life. And I remember her saying, we are the reason for our own affliction. And I was like, what? What? So that had a huge influence on my life. So Louise Hay, who else? I mean, that's number one. Right now I'm reading, it changes all the time, but I'm also reading a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is amazing. And it's all about trauma and how it's stored in both our mind, body, and soul. And it's from a Harvard psychiatrist who's a pioneer in the field of research in terms of trauma. So he's bringing a lot to the public also about like some, I don't know if corruption is the right word, but what goes on, how things are categorized in the DSM for psychology, and why certain things are funded and certain things aren't. And he's bringing through the power of just his own word and through his own book to the public about all these other therapies that work, even though they don't necessarily have the research facts behind it right now. And his name is, I don't want to butcher his name. I'm actually, The Body Keeps, let's be honest here, Bessel van der Kolk.
Okay.
So yes, highly recommend that. Right now, that's having a huge influence on my teachings. And then, let's see, a third person that has a major influence. I would actually say one of my first, when I was first working at an ad tech company in Israel, my first boss, when I was 23 in sales, in technology, he believed in me. He was like, you're good. He sat with me and always said to me every week during our weeklies, he always said, come to me with, if you're going to come to me with a question, come with the answer as well. Like, think it through. And he called me out on my shit, but he held me responsible and also believed in me. And I think he really shaped who I am in terms of, I don't think I'd be able to build what I'm doing right now without that. Also, my grandma, she was cool. She was the best.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we all have like one of those managers / bosses that, they kind of give it to you. And at the time, it's almost like, why are they coming down so hard on me? But then you realize like later on, it's just like, you know what? I'm glad she did that. And you just reminded me, I have to reach out to somebody that actually helped. Yeah. So, okay. Let's get back to the interview. Sorry, I went off.
Right. No.
So what are some characteristics and skills you think business owners need in order to be successful in business?
Yeah, I would say persistence and consistency. As I said earlier, things are going to knock us down. A lot of it is exploring what works for you, right? Like one avenue of there's so many different platforms, one avenue of getting your message out there, or your brand or your name. It may not work. And even though you invested your time and energy and you want to obviously you want it to work. If it doesn't, keep showing up and try the next thing. And something's going to work and you will find it. But I think honestly, hard work, consistency, persistence, honesty with yourself, right? Like keep showing up. If you're no longer ignited by what your original mission was, revisit it and be honest with yourself.
Absolutely. If it's not working, you got to go try another way.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to admit that.
I know. I felt that same way, but we're here.
We're here. We're doing it.
Exactly. So entrepreneurship, we know, is a very tough road. And in those moments when you feel like, okay, I can't do this anymore, how do you stay focused and how do you stay motivated to keep moving?
I shift. I try to shift my energy a lot. So I've learned, and I am always learning, to work with my nature, right? So I'm super ADHD. I used to look at people in the office, especially sellers that were super focused and could sit there for 8 hours and just focus on these like bomb emails and reach outs. And I'm like, 45 minutes, I need to sit over there. I need to do a handstand. I need to have a coffee and then run around the block. Like, so working with my nature. So if I'm feeling really like bogged down and just something isn't working for me, take that break. I have a rebounder, like a mini trampoline that's $50 from Amazon that I'm obsessed with. And it gets my levels up. I blast my music. I get on there. I get my endorphins going. And then I go back to my to-do list and try something else. So working with my nature, also having a vision, right? As I said, as I'm ADHD, so I need to have that to-do list these are my goals for the day of the week. And focus on something. And then when I'm feeling, sorry, the original question was I was feeling, I don't even remember.
Yeah. The question was, how do we stay motivated?
Stay motivated. So going back to that to-do list and hitting another goal. And then once one thing works out, it's like, yes, I got it. And that's motivating in and of itself.
Yeah.
So having that vision, working with your nature, and honestly support for motivation. Like, it's hard doing it on your own. Like, where's my praise? Who's patting my back? You have to be your own champion, and also reach out to people who root for you, right? Like the people that are genuinely on your side, and tell them what the hell you're doing and let them have your back and ask for support. That's really, really important as humans.
Exactly. So wait, back up. You said that you have a trampoline in your house. Really?
And I live in Brooklyn. I used to live in a tiny little, in the West Village, which is a great area, but my apartment was the size of like my bathroom here. But yeah, it's a rebounder and they're foldable. You need two people to open it, but it's one of those mini ones.
Okay.
Get it on Amazon, 50 something bucks. And it's a great workout and it's really easy on the joints. Ooh. And it's fun.
Okay.
So I know so many people that got a Peloton. I'm like, damn, good for you. I love my trampoline though, and I'm so happy I found it. So highly recommend the rebounder. It gets the endorphins going. Physical exercise is so important. Like,
okay. All right, I'm gonna have to look into that because sometimes
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, yes, please do. Okay. So, what would your parents, right? What would your parents describe what you do every day for a living?
I don't think they understand. They're like, what? You're a therapist? Did you go back to school? No, but I explained it. They had no idea what I did in terms of ad tech sales either. It's like, you sell mobile phones? I don't get it. But no, I think coaching has become more mainstream and more of a respected and, welcome part of healing. So I think they would describe it as helping people, I hope. I have to ask them that one.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I put it out there. I put it out there because I asked my mom what I did recently, and she was just completely wrong, and I had to correct that. I was like, no, that's not what I do.
What did she say?
She was like, she's on television. She's on the TV, and I'm like, this YouTube. I'm not on TV. Like,
I had to explain to my dad what a podcast does. He's like, what? I was like, why is this so hard? Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Radio show for our age now. Digital age.
Exactly.
Of course.
Okay. So what is your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
That's a tough one, Kelly.
Yeah. Everybody says that.
Right. Because the word failure, I try not to put the judgment, right? But like, let's also be honest. We have to learn from our mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I don't necessarily want to say it's a failure, but when I was younger and I wasn't happy with a job, I would just quit without having another one. I did that. I did that maybe 2 or 3 times. And they were big ones. And I look back now, I'm like, and I learned from that, right? I learned before when I was at my most recent company to take my coaching course while I'm there and still give it my all while I'm there. And another thing, honestly, if I didn't care about what I was selling, sometimes I would just like, or I didn't feel like I was good enough at it, to be honest, I would take my foot off the pedal. I was like, I'm not good enough. I'm just going to stop and not focus on it. But instead of that, I learned to work with that and meet that fear and meet that, like, what am I actually telling myself? Why am I'm so scared of failure. I'm just going to stop putting any energy and effort. And that was a huge lesson to be like, it's okay. Why don't we look at what that fear is actually about? Because usually it's not about the thing that it's about, right? It's not about not getting my sales goals. It's about, I'm scared I'm not good enough. So let me learn to work with that and meet that and turn that over, shift that belief. Because again, if it's going to show up there, it's going to show up again in the future. So if we don't deal with it then, it's going to come up in other ways.
Exactly. So, that's kind of like a trick question that I ask everybody, because I don't even call them failures anymore. I call them lesson learns, lessons that I've learned. And I just ask everybody that because I'm like, everybody says the same thing. I don't really want to call them failures. Right. I would rather call them, something else. And I apologize. My dog is being very rude. And
I don't hear him.
There she is.
Oh, there she is. She wants to join.
Yes, she does. Come get her, please.
She's like, there's no such thing as a failure.
Exactly. Okay, so what is your greatest fear and how do you manage it?
Coming in with the heavy questions.
I know. I'm sorry.
Honestly, I'm going to be real transparent here. I think that I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. And I keep seeing that coming up. I'm all about getting to, and I do this in my coaching, core beliefs, right? Like, what is behind that fear of not finishing this project or not closing a client, right? It's that there's something wrong with me. There's a fatal flaw, and that's it. And that permeates different parts of my life. So I would say that I've been coming up against that a lot. I don't know that it'll ever fully go away, but I'm willing to hold space for it and meet it and flip it on its head. Because is that real or is that something that I just conditioned now to believe? And then it's interesting because once we notice these thoughts and that those are governing our actions, we're able to then flip it and start attracting things in our life that say the opposite. Because if you believe something, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, absolutely. Speak it into existence. That's what I say. We got to speak it into existence.
We got to speak it. Words are powerful.
Yes, it is. Okay. So, what advice would you give someone wanting to start a business or just a career similar to yours?
Yeah. I would say to reach out to your network and do your research. Find out someone who has what you want and emulate that. Honestly, we're so scared sometimes to just reach out to people. They're like, oh, they're so busy. Nowadays, slide into someone's DMs, send them a message on LinkedIn. Worst case, they don't respond, but show up for yourself in a way that you're a little bit scared. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that for myself too. As I say that, I'm like, okay, time to do that too, right? Yeah. But it's all there. It's all at our fingertips. You don't try unless they respond, and people are willing to help each other. So show up for yourself in a way that's a little bit scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll never know. Because I'm gonna be honest. I'm in real estate, and one of the people that I learned from, I thought was untouchable at some point in time. I was just like, this guy is not going to talk to me. Like, who am I? I'm exactly. Just nobody. Right. But I speak to him on a daily basis. So it's kind of like, Yeah, I took a chance and I slid into his DMs and he slid right back. And I was just like, interesting.
There you go. Good for you. I'm inspired too.
Exactly.
Good for you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's have you ever had someone reach out to you? Like, you show up in the way that other people will show up for you. So if you'll do it for someone else will do it for you. And if it wasn't him, it would be the next one, you know?
Exactly. Okay. All right. So what resources helped you along the way to running your business? Was there any particular resources that helped you get started and is still helping you become afloat?
I mean, all the resources, honestly, my own network, reaching out first, I think was a big shift I had to make in my mentality in terms of I am a senior director of sales and brand partnerships, right? I'm a life coach. I work with people with anxious attachment. So reaching out to my network and showing up as that person, right? There was a mental shift I had to make. I was scared. I was scared I would be embarrassed. I was scared of judgment. But your network, as I said, are your should be your allies. So yeah, using that network, reaching out to people for support, I think that's huge. People will show up in ways that you would surprise you. Digital, I mean, social media, right? It was intimidating figuring out Facebook ads and all that stuff. And I'm very much figuring it out. And I just did a workshop and I used Eventbrite because I couldn't figure out a landing page and it worked awesome. So using all the resources there at our fingertips. And again, I'm a huge believer in human relations, asking for help. I didn't even think of Eventbrite. And I got together with some female friends that are all entrepreneurs and we had a mastermind and talked about what we're doing. And that was huge. And they all, gave me these simple tips and offers to help me. And it really shifted things. So your network, I think, is huge, and everything that's out there at our fingertips.
Yes. YouTube University is what I call. They should change their name to that. YouTube University. Yeah.
I need to get on YouTube too. That's on the docket. So
yes. Okay. All right. So, what advice would you tell your younger self?
To pause.
Okay.
To stop running away and it's okay to feel your shit. It's okay to be scared and feel your feelings because, again, I'm obviously, if it's not apparent, a big believer in feeling your feelings and looking at your stuff. I was so overwhelmed and scared, and I don't judge myself for it because I didn't know how to deal with it. I wasn't necessarily taught those skills. So to pause and allow yourself to be with your stuff. Because, for example, if we're chasing something because we think it's going to make us feel better, it usually feels worse to chase it than to sit with the crappy feelings of not having it. And to look for support in all ways outside, ask for help. Honestly, I was always trying to do it on my own, independent. That's kind of how I got to where I am, and I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's important to be vulnerable in order to make some serious changes.
Absolutely. Okay. We're gonna come back to that because I have
all right
for you. All right, but
I love the topic. So
if money wasn't an option, what would you do every day?
Ooh, I think I would do this, but less of the marketing aspect.
Okay.
I think I would facilitate free groups. I would love to bring women together and have women's circles healing. I think there's power in numbers and in sharing stories. I would paint more. I would put aside time every day to my creative pursuits. Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Okay. All right.
I'm sure I'd figure out some other things too.
Exactly.
Money wasn't a worry, but
okay. So what's your vision for the next 5 years for Holding Space Heals?
Yeah, I would love to have a thriving practice where I have a set number of clients that are really, really focused and are really willing to put in the work and work with them over the long term, I would love to do retreats. And I would love to have a few workshops that people can tap into without having to talk with me personally, but that they can still connect and have that resource at their fingertips. And group coaching as well.
Okay.
And I love retreats. I've gone on some retreats and they changed my life. So would love to put those together. Hopefully after the pandemic, I can.
Yes. And hopefully this will be over soon, but
Yep.
Okay, so here's some signature questions that I ask every guest on my podcast. So, what is something unique that no one knows about you or your company?
I'm an open book, so it's really hard to know when people don't know. And that's something, obviously, that I've cultivated in the last few years. Something that someone doesn't know about me. I don't know. A lot of things. I mean, I just put my biggest fear out there, so I don't know what else I got.
Okay. No, it's fine. If you don't have anything, that's fine.
I mean, I'm sure I do. I have an epileptic dog.
Oh.
He's amazing, though, and he saved me, too. He's a rescue. I brought him with me over from Israel, and I, at first, here's something, I didn't want him because he was sick, and I was like, I'm not going to get a sick dog. You know, that's a lot of work, but I ended up taking him in because his old owner had to get rid of him, and she was going to bring him to the pound, and I was like, no, let me take him and see if I can find him a home. And then we fell in love, and he's now, you know, lived with me in Brooklyn and in the West Village and Tel Aviv and next stop LA. So
awesome.
His name is Chewy, and we love him.
Chewy, I love that name, Chewy.
Yeah.
What kind of dog is he?
He is a mix, but I believe a Chewini. So he's definitely half Dachshund, which is like a wiener dog.
Okay.
And then we think maybe a Chihuahua.
Okay.
He's a mix.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I have a mix too. She's a multi-poo, Shih Tzu and Maltese.
Oh, stop. So she's like a cute, white, fluffy little.
Yeah, but she's a little demon seed. So.
Oh, the little one's always all right. Chewy has a demon side to him. He gets territorial when people try to go near my bed, which is a problem when I have guesting. And you used to have to pass my bed to get to my bathroom, and let's just say he doesn't have the best rep with my family because of that. But we love him.
All right, so I wanted to go back to this question before we start to wrap things up. So, what are some common things that you see with clients in your business? Like, what are some common things that they come to you for healing for?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. A bunch of my clients are actually, I always just kind of assumed I would work with more women. But what's really interesting is working with men. I'm working with males and saying they have the same shit as we do. They have the same fears of abandonment, worthiness complex, you know, and we're all humans working with our humanness. And we all have limiting beliefs that if you're willing to face, you're able to work with. But that was actually really eye-opening and beautiful to see that people are really all kind of at the core. We're all the same in our ways, right? We all are dealing with our fears, and obviously they vary from person to person. But I would say, honestly, the gender thing was really interesting, and that my perspective as a female can help them kind of even tap into their female, like we're all masculine, feminine, right? If we're going to talk about energy, we all have that within us. And that men a lot of times aren't, even more so than us in our society, we're already not allowed to, but not allowed to like express and feel. They're so ashamed. Yeah. I should be over this person, or I should, and taking that judgment out of it and allowing them to face it in a way without judgment for themselves is really rewarding. And it's been a common theme, I would say, that I see. And women too. We want to run away from our stuff. We're ashamed of our own feelings. And once we can allow ourselves to meet them is when we can really start to shift them.
Okay. So what tips would you give someone who, let's just say someone who's struggling with something and not they don't want to get over it, but they want to get past it. What tips would you give to help them get past something that they're struggling with, something that they want, like, children or marriage?
Yeah.
They haven't gotten there yet, but they want to get there. So what tips would you give them, like a person that's struggling with something like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things. Number one, as I said, reach out for help. We need some guidance in this stuff. It takes a village. And if we had all the answers, we would be there. So sometimes it's really important to just have someone or some people or a group or what have you to give you that sight that you can't necessarily see when you're so in it. Whether it be in the form of a coach or a therapist, or there's so many like meetups and circles and things like that. And number two, I think it is really important to have that help, because a lot of times stuff will come up that can be really overwhelming, right? So again, if you have the resources, a coach, a therapist is great to have, but we can do a lot of healing on our own. A second piece of advice I would give is to give yourself the space, and physically give yourself the space. Put a half-hour timer on a Sunday night, Tuesday night, whatever, what have you. We'll spend hours watching Netflix, right? Put a half hour to the side, set a sacred space, light a candle, set a timer, put your phone on airplane mode, journal, free write. What is coming up? I want to have kids. What does that look like for me? Why don't I think I have that? Ask yourself the hard questions. There's no judgment, just free write, get it out, because our minds are, I call it, I'm sure you've heard this phrase, monkey mind. It'll just say, it's just swinging back and forth. And we're trying to intellectualize everything, and we need to just get it out and be able to organize that. So journaling, setting some space aside, meditation is huge. I know a lot of people have a hard time meditating. I have a hard time meditating. Guided meditations. YouTube has millions out there of free meditations. Set aside 5 minutes. Chakra meditations are great because it brings you back to your breath. Our breath is what grounds us in our life, in our time and space. What else? Journaling, meditation, deep breathing. As I said, breath, there's deep breathing apps. And that grounds you, and that creates a space to get out of your head too, right? So I think journaling is important to get it out, but also connecting to other parts of you that aren't necessarily your monkey mind. And prayer, personal prayer, I think is great. If you can write yourself a prayer to whatever your higher power is, right? Whether that be whatever, the universe, God, the moon, the stars, whatever you want to call it, something outside of yourself, because at the end of the day, we can only control what we can control. I think personal prayer is huge. Write yourself a prayer. Please, God, let me have whatever is for the highest good, and have clarity for that. So there's so many amazing tools, and I love working with my clients on this and giving them homework to create space for themselves, because as much as an hour a week can help someone, the real work comes in when you're with yourself. And again, that guidance to hold you accountable and give you that guidance and support to get there is crucial. But cultivating and carving out that time for yourself is really sacred.
Yeah, I love all of that.
Yay!
That's why I asked that question, because I know there's a lot of people out here that are like, dealing with things and they don't know how to deal with them. So
yeah,
we would put that gem out there so that everybody listens.
Absolutely. And I love it. Yeah.
So one last question before we go.
Yes.
Do you have any questions for me?
I have a lot of questions for you, Kelly. Well, what ignites you?
Ooh, what ignites me to do this podcast, or
what brings you joy? What gets you going as Kelly? Like, what is like your happy place?
My happy place. My happy place is vacationing anywhere. I don't care where I am, but I guess my happy place would be seeing the smile on my husband's face. Like, he is one who does not like to smile at all.
Okay.
But, when we're spending time together and he'll crack a smile and I'm like, oh, he smiles.
You're like, got him.
Yeah, right. So
I love
I guess
that.
that would be something. And, we're trying to have children right now. So
Okay.
right now it's just us and my little bad sugar. So they bring me joy, and
I
just
love it.
seeing other people happy actually brings me joy. So
That's an awesome answer. I love that. Well, I wish you all the best on your journey. I'm sure everything's going to happen as it needs to.
yes,
Exciting.
yes. Okay. So how can our listeners connect with you if they, want to either start a coaching business or even, get your services? Because I have a couple of
That's
friends that I'm probably going to reach out to you.
amazing. I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways. So always follow me on Instagram, hold space to heal. I try to put out free resources as often as possible. I have a few free guides on how to feel your feelings, right? Like how to tactically do that. My favorite tips. I have a workshop that I did on attachment styles and showing up for conscious love, whether in and out of a relationship, that's completely free. And I also do a free first discovery session to see if we can actually serve each other, right? It's a relationship. So yeah, follow me on Instagram. My website is holdingspaceheals.com. You can send me an email or a chat on there. I also have a Facebook and a Facebook support group for people with anxious attachment, to support each other and hold that space for each other. So yeah, my email is Risa at Holding Space Heals. So would love to chat with you, with your friends, with any of our listeners here. So
Awesome. So real quick, what is
yes,
anxious attachment? Just in case people don't know exactly what it is.
absolutely. So just to take it a step back, there are 4 different attachment styles, and it's called attachment theory. And it was something found in the 60s, I believe, or maybe it was the 70s by Bowlby. And it essentially is how children and babies learn to attach through their parents and through their childhood. And there's 4 different categories. Now, they've almost fairly recently, in 2008, had another study about how that affects us in our relationships as adults, which is fascinating. And there's a book called Attached by Amir Levine, which pretty much brought it to the mainstream. And everyone that I speak to that's ever read it is like, wow, my mind is blown. So it's about how those different attachment styles affect our relationships today. So as adults. So anxious attachment is one of the 4 attachment styles. So just to take it back one step back, secure attachment is something I believe it's about 70% of the population. And those are people that are able to form relationships pretty easily, are able to communicate their needs, don't get overly triggered by romantic relationships, right? Avoidant is, then there's avoidant anxious and anxious ambivalent. So the other 2 are avoidant and anxious. And what's interesting about those, sometimes it's like oil and water, but they'll attract each other. But avoidants are the ones that you would think fear of commitment, right? Like, you're starting to get close and all is well, but then when real intimacy starts to happen, they run away. And they get overwhelmed and suffocated. And again, I think an important part of this is taking the judgment out of it, because these are all just like our coping mechanisms, right? So then this brings me, I'm giving a long-winded answer, but anxious attachment is someone who's pretty afraid of being alone. And it's almost like you're seeking intimacy and closeness as a way to meet your own needs. And it makes you emotionally dependent on others. So it's almost like the presence of a loved one is a remedy for your strong emotional needs. And it inhibits a lot of times a genuine relationship, because you're so scared. There's a lot of fear of abandonment there, because it's your needs that are coming up and you're seeking them to be met from someone that's not their job. So it comes up. Does that make sense? Does that answer?
Yeah, it does.
So, yeah. And it's really interesting. I highly recommend that book and just learning some more about it. There's a free quiz on my website to see what kind of style attachment you are. I also have it on my Instagram. I'm happy to send it over to someone. But what's really cool about that, I'm all about the solution, right? So noticing where you fall, and it can be a spectrum. You're not necessarily all or the other, but usually you'll know if you're anxiously attached, right? But looking at that and working with that and understanding what boundaries you need before entering a partnership so that you don't go down the rabbit hole of a toxic relationship, which I've seen in my own life and I've seen in the lives of my clients and my friends, and it's very painful. And it's something that we can learn from and use that to have like really beautiful and thriving relationships, to work with it as opposed to like trying to fit, a square hole in a round peg.
Yes.
Which I've done a lot, and it's really hard. You know, we got shit to do. We have growth to do. We need to focus on ourselves. And if you go down a toxic relationship, it'll suck the life right out of you. So
definitely will.
Yeah.
Couple too in my past. So okay, well, guys, you heard it here. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to put all of her information in the show notes, everybody. All right. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Kelly. Bye.